Hey friends, how are you doing? It is Monday. No, it is Monday, June 11th, and we're going to talk about some tech stuff. Happy to see you all here after the weekend. And today, just a few things that we want to go through, maybe all of them, depending on how much time we have. Ajit Pai's FU to the American people is official now. There is no such thing as net neutrality, at least for the moment. So we'll see how that goes. Apple's radical new design is confirmed. You see, they actually put it in quotes, and that doesn't really surprise me because every time we get these leaks, and this is, there's no way to avoid it. We'll be talking about this until we actually see the phone sometime in September, but we'll talk about that a little bit. My life is not your porn. South Korean women are protesting spy cams, and things are getting strange. And this is just one indication of the surveillance society that we are living in, and it's continuing to get crazier. So we'll talk about that. I tried the iPhone 10, not me. Quotes again, this is someone else. Let's see, it's on that side of the screen, and I'm looking over here, so this is bizarre. Tried the iPhone 10 for a few weeks to see what hooked even the biggest skeptics, and here's what this person found. We'll talk about that. Chinese city gets a smartphone zombie walkway. Kind of feel like we already have those. They're just not really designated right now. And does wireless charging degrade your battery faster? We will talk about all of that and more right after this. Hey, Joshua, Greg M, another rabbit hole Monday. Well, that's discouraging. I know how that feels. Nate, Tech Services, good to see you here. Harvey, how you doing? Thank you. I appreciate that. I wanted to get something on, it's like, what do you do for a live stream when it starts? Because no one's going to know about it until the notification goes out there or until the stream actually starts. But I don't just want like a static image of like nothing. So I thought, hey, I'm going to pick something that's interesting and hopefully thought-provoking. So thank you for that. Last day of net neutrality in the U.S. and tomorrow AT&T may be allowed to purchase Time Warner depending on a ruling from a court case coming down tomorrow. And also we may see a merger between T-Mobile and Sprint at some time in the future, although I'm skeptical about that one happening also. Dave, how are you doing? One step forward, two steps back. Good to see you, Johnny. So let's start with the big one here, and that is going to be, drum roll, where are you? I love this little meme that they made here. Look up, what does the end of net neutrality mean? And then there's a big hand in your face saying, no, you can't access that website. And obviously, it's not going to reach that point anytime soon. I really think that, one, we've got several states who are passing their own legislation. So this thing is going to be, in my, amateur, humble opinion, probably going to be something that we see just get dragged through courts and lawsuits and new legislation and people fighting over it. And who knows what's going to happen in the long term, really. But I suspect that, with over 80% of the population saying that they're in favor of net neutrality, they want it, catching the FCC in a straight up lie, saying that their website got hacked when really what happened was a lot of people went and commented and said, no, we do not want you to repeal net neutrality. And they said, well, too bad, and did it anyways. And ultimately, I am absolutely pro-capitalism. I believe that people should be rewarded for hard work, and there should be an incentive to achieve, wealth or whatever it is that you want to get out of life. But when we reach a certain point, that the bigger the company is and the more money that they have to spend on lobbying efforts, we lose a lot of what democracy stands for, and that is understanding what the people want and what's best for the people and giving them access to that. And instead we see that people are being paid off and it's pay to play and payola and all that other kind of stuff where just lobbying money goes to the right people and they get to pass or repeal, I should say, anything that's not in their best interest. There's something wrong with the system, it's certainly not the worst system in the world, but I think that Winston Churchill said this very well, and I've probably said this before. Democracy is the worst form of government in the world, except for all of the other ones. So I guess what he was saying is it's the best that we have, but it's certainly far from perfect. At least that's the way I look at it. So in any case, yeah, this happened, and it goes into effect officially. What will we expect? Probably not a lot in the short term, I wouldn't think. when you make a move like this that is clearly against what the people want, you can't do anything so radical that it causes a huge protest or uproar, which, there is a protest on a certain level, but it's not going to be people marching in the streets with, torches and pitchforks or anything like that. But certainly if they don't take their time and make these transitions slowly, there will be some backlash. And again, we've got other things in the works, on the state level. I think this does need to be a federal thing, especially when we're dealing with the Federal Communications website or the Federal Trade Commission, the FCC, these things that govern us on a national level. But a good place to start is saying that if you want to do business in the state where our population resides, these are laws that you have to follow. And if that screws up your programming because you wanted to build this thing out on a nationwide level and now you have to deal with each state individually, hey, it's something, right? It's going to make them think and hopefully come to better terms. And in the meantime, here's what I really question, with all the big ISPs saying how terrible the net neutrality was for them, how it was preventing growth and how they couldn't, build out their infrastructure and all these advances that they wanted to make, and they couldn't because net neutrality was holding them back. When do you think that's going to happen? That's what I want to see. Let's see all this great stuff that we were promised. Is it? Oh, no. It's almost definitely not going to happen in the short term, and I'm certain we'll see someone come out and say, oh, well, we have this in the plans, and we're going to do this, and whatever. And anyways, we shall see. Let's switch over here real quick to this screen so I can get you guys here in with the chat, because, again, I'm going to trim the beginning of this video. Are we going back to the times of super expensive phone bills with little to no features? Johnny, since you mentioned that, there's another interesting kind of side story here that isn't directly related to net neutrality, but as of recently, there is a lawsuit pending, I believe, against telecommunication companies for attaching basically what they used to call slamming. So the employees who work at, it could be anyone. It could be Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile's, wherever it is. They get an incentive for selling features to their customers. And I want to say what happened was this has been going on for a long time. And the problem is that a lot of times they will add those features onto your bill. Like, let's see, what's a service that you might, let's say they upgrade your data plan, or they add some insurance onto your account, or maybe roadside assistance or something like that. And there are a lot of people out there who don't look at their bill too closely. They just get their bill, they pay it, or it's on an auto payment system or something like that. And obviously, you're in the right to say, hey, I never ordered this, but really you shouldn't have the responsibility to have to police your own statement of the services that you're purchasing because you have never agreed to them. And what happens is that we have a few people that say, hey, I can make a few extra bucks in commission if I add this feature onto this customer's account, kind of like we had with the whole Wells Fargo situation. And that had been happening. And if I recall correctly, as of last week, that has now officially become illegal. I want to say that's what they did, is they actually have a case and they said, okay, that's it. You can't do that anymore. How that was legal in the first place, I don't understand. But on top of that, if you haven't already noticed, if you have cable network, cable services in your home, you get automatically charged for some things that you might not actually use. And one of mine, when I was trying to, bring my bill down to a reasonable number because I wanted to upgrade to get the higher upload speed for my live streams, I started looking at my bill very carefully, and they're charging me for a local sports access fee of some sort. And I said, what is this? I don't have any sports channels, so I don't understand what this means. And the rep told me, well, you have certain sporting events included in your package, and that's where those fees go to pay. And I said, well, you know what? I don't need those services. I'm not watching sports through your network, so I don't need to have that taken off. And they told me in no uncertain terms, that is not an option. Everyone who has cable in your geographic area pays the same amount of money to get access to the sport channels for the people who want to watch them. Now, how does that make sense? I don't understand that. If the thing is going to be you pay for what you get, then if it costs you more money to get access to these sporting events, then shouldn't the people who want to watch them pay accordingly and everyone else be able to opt out? So I hope that we see something happen in that realm where the the Federal Trade Commission or someone, hopefully some consumer advocate comes out and says, you know what, it's not right to keep charging people for things that they're not using. It's crazy, and it's getting out of hand if you ask me. Is Mike wearing red today as a form of protest? I am not actually. I should, but I'm not. I wanted to see honestly if this would work with the green screen. It does. I have a lot of clothing that I can't wear in front of this thing back here, and you certainly don't want to stare at my black wall. But I thought this was kind of cool. It's a hot spot, so related to what we're talking about here. T-Mobile is already throttling my data, even though I have a grandfathered unlimited plan. Hey, and you know what? Sprint just came out with some crazy plan that's like $15 a month or something like that. But the catch is you get slow speeds, and your video, I think, is limited to like 480p. So yeah, always read the small print, obviously. But you know, to a certain extent, you will get what you pay for. But a lot of times we end up paying for things that we don't need, and that seems to be a real problem. Threaten to cancel your cable. You may get offered a cheaper plan. I might, Harvey, and I would certainly like to do that, and I wish that besides threatening I had a realistic option. Like I could say, if you don't fix the problems that I'm having, I'll go to this other company. However, I don't have that other company, so I wonder if those reps understand, or I wonder if they're trained accordingly. Like, you know, do you treat customers different when they seriously could switch to another service? Or do you kind of know what's available in that area and say, oh, you're going to quit? Okay, we'll see you later. Because I've had that response from companies before. And one of them, which rhymes with Horizon, you know, that was kind of the tipping point for me when they said, oh, you don't want to pay for data? Well, you don't get to use a BlackBerry then. And this is a long time ago, obviously. And I said, well, I bought the phone. It's mine, but I don't need a data plan. So I just want a regular cell phone plan with this BlackBerry phone. And they said, we cannot do that. And sorry if you don't like it. And they also had me take a number when I got to the store. And at that point, I just kind of realized that they don't really need my business that bad. If I have to wait in line, you know, for 15, 20 minutes to talk to someone, then obviously you have a pretty heavy workload and you don't need me here to add to that. So I took my business elsewhere. That was my way of protesting. But, you know, we've got 4 different carriers we can choose from. When it comes to high-speed internet, things get a little trickier, unfortunately. AT&T grandfather plan dollars are increasing with additional fees. I did without cable TV for 3 years and only used 3 OTA channels here and never missed cable. Well, good for you, man. Hey, Greg, what kind of rabbit hole are you having, by the way? I'm just curious. And I'm going to try to limit everything here to 10 minutes because we have so much to talk about. So this is your place to come and hear the headlines and a little bit about what's going on. And then, of course, the articles are linked down in the video description. So if you want to see more information about this, or know where I'm getting it from, because I'm not making this stuff up. I'm reading it somewhere, and I believe these are reputable sources. That is the plan. Also, why in Forbes? What are you doing? You guys are killing me. Okay, so there was some more information on net neutrality. That's not the one I was looking for, but this one is. My life is not your porn. 30,000 South Korean women protest spy cams. This is weird. Now, last week, or about a week and a half ago, I think it was, I read an article where a woman had found that the baby monitor in her home had been hacked and someone was using it to watch. I don't know how this works. I guess she had it aimed. I think the thing was she had the baby monitor aimed at the area where she would occasionally breastfeed the baby, you know, which, you know, here's the thing. We are inviting cameras and microphones into our homes in one way, shape, or form or another, right? So I get that, but we have to keep in mind that these things are not bulletproof when it comes to privacy. So if anyone's attitude is, well, I've got nothing to hide, I don't care, that's fine. But, you know, don't have a... It's probably wise not to aim a camera at an area where you're going to be, you know, less than presentable. Is that a good word? At the same time, it's scary to know that there are people out there who can figure out ways to get into these things. Like, this is a real deal. You know, 10 years ago, most people would have laughed at the idea of someone spying on you through your webcam or your baby monitor or your phone's microphone or whatever, but you know, we're seeing it happen. So this is the real deal. Well, apparently a big problem, and I can only foresee this as becoming a bigger problem in South Korea and everywhere else in the world, is that spy cams have been located inside of public restrooms, dressing rooms. You know, they had problems with people pointing cameras up women's skirts as they're coming down escalators. I mean, this is really sick and scary at the same time. You know, the fact that this could happen, and I always wonder, like, what kind of person does this? You know, if you can't, obviously someone with some sociopathic tendencies, I would say. If you can't imagine a female relative of yours, and you know, given I understand that a female could do the same thing, but predominantly it seems to be a problem with men who are committing this type of crime. If you can't understand what this would be like to another person, period, you know, not to mention, think your mother, your sister, your wife, your daughter, your, you know, someone else. That is a warped thing. But that being said, this is a real concern. This is something that is happening, and the problem with it apparently in Korea or in South Korea is there's this new porn genre called molka. I guess that's how you pronounce it. And it is apparently becoming increasingly popular, number one. Secondly, when these cameras are found, I guess the big protest is about the fact that not a lot is being done when they catch people doing this kind of thing. However, they did catch a female doing something similar, and she got into a bunch of trouble. So they're saying, hey, there's a huge double standard here. If you're going to prosecute people for breaking the law, we can't pick and choose, you know, based on who they are, what gender they are, or, you know, what position in society or anything else like that. So that's pretty bad. All females are victimized by hidden cameras. Even in public places, it is hard for us to see news of the men who film and leak such images being punished. And it sounds like they're not having much, you know, beyond a slap on the hand, I guess, and also not bringing these people out into public and saying, hey, this is what this person did. And certainly if if there is a sexual predator, you know, someone who's on the sexual offender list moving into your neighborhood, you want to know that, right? And I would think this qualifies. So pretty sad. Hopefully something will happen there. They're saying that let's go back here real quick. According to police statistics, suspects are overwhelmingly male. Not a huge surprise, right? In 2017, some 96% of suspects were caught by police. In 5,437 such cases were male. Of them, 119 were charged and faced punishment. So out of 5,400 suspects who were caught, only 119 were charged. Out of the 283 female suspects who were apprehended, none of them faced charges. Okay, I thought it said that like a few of the numbers were skewed, but apparently none of the female suspects were apprehended. On a larger scale, only 2.6% of males were arrested between 2012 and 2017. Around 540 people out of over 20,900 suspected perpetrators. That is messed up. That is really weird, sick, and God, man, I can only imagine, you know, how invasive that is to have someone spying on you. You know, whether it's hacking into your camera at your house, or, you know, you go to use a public restroom or a dressing room or something like that. What the heck is wrong with people? Let's see. Greg says, just a software related for Windows, Blue Screen of Death, my favorite. Hey, I want to tell you guys something quickly for you text there. And this is probably stating the obvious, but I mentioned this to someone and I thought it went without saying. But if you've ever had a Windows or any other type of machine start up, and when it does, it flashes an error message on the display for like a fraction of a second, and you're thinking, and there's like this much information, right? You go like, how would you ever be able to read that? It's impossible. It like literally flashes behind your eyes. Well, if you happen to have a camera like built into your phone, set that sucker up and put it on slow-mo, especially if you have that option. Start up the computer and record it, and then you can go in frame by frame until you find the message and read the entire thing. And I was blown away. I told my friend about this, and he's like, that's genius. I never thought of it. And honestly, someone else told me. So quite a handy little trick there to do. Track down to a recently installed software. I go to do some benchmarks on another machine. Had to upgrade softwares first. Fun. Yeah, I don't do a whole lot of software myself. It gets complicated, right? It's totally wrong to take a picture of another person for personal interest, even if one happens to be a paparazzi. And of course, Johnny, the question there that comes into play is that, you know, it's certainly not polite to take someone's picture without them wanting it. And yet, when you're in a public place, there is no law that prohibits that. So this is one of those sad areas, I think, where we should be able to rely on the other person doing the right thing, you know, and being considerate. But unfortunately, in this day and age, that is often not the case. So until some sort of law is passed, I don't know that we'll, you know, see that change in any way. Most of my neighbors have security cameras. Many are unsecured with the default username and password. That is scary for them. Sad. That people really need to be educated. I think this should probably go along with, when you buy the phone or the webcam or the computer or whatever it is, the tablet, maybe a little warning about, hey, here's what you should be careful of when you're out there in the wild without their consent or knowledge. I agree completely, Johnny. I hate to say it. I don't see it changing anytime soon. Surveillance aside, that is called voyeurism, and is borderline a sexual assault. Just remember me of one film starring Sharon Stone, and that is about a penthouse with highly tight surveillance. Yeah, I agree, and I know that there are certain situations. Obviously, there is this thing called a reasonable expectation of privacy. So even if you're in public, if you can prove that you have a reasonable expectation of privacy, which would obviously cover dressing rooms, restrooms, in any other place that you could assume that, hey, if I go in here, nobody's watching me, then you would certainly have a case. So that is the thing about this article. These people should be prosecuted, and with such a small number of them ever reaching that point, that is messed up. What is this? Oh, so they were chanting a thing here. Yeah, so scary stuff. Watch out, and I guess be aware. Maybe educate people if you know anyone who might fall into that category. That is just so wrong. Too bad that we need laws to tell us differently. I tried the iPhone, again, not me, someone else, tried the iPhone 10 for a few weeks to see what hooked even the biggest skeptics, and here's what I found. So what do you think happened here? This is from Business Insider, and I'm probably gonna butcher this person's name, so I'm not gonna try to pronounce it. And she said that her boyfriend traded his iPhone 10 for an iPhone 7. And the reason I thought this is interesting is because I watched another video where someone was talking about the future of phones, and considering how many people are converting to Apple, and the fact that eventually, as time goes by within the next few years, we'll probably be seeing the iPhone 10 as kind of the base model. Like right now, what the iPhone 7 is, the iPhone 10 will eventually be that phone. So we're going to keep moving towards these similar designs. And I give credit Apple for at least having a few different models. But let's face it, the variety that we had in phones, even a few years ago, it's just become so limited. And when you look at a company that says something like, think different, and be different, and don't do like everyone else is doing. And now when it comes to phones, comes to handsets, for the most part, if you're buying an iPhone, you're going to be doing the same thing that everyone's doing. Maybe you get yours in rose gold or space gray or something else. But, outside of specs, it looks like they're going to have like 3 models to choose from, and that's it. So do you want A, B, or C, which I'm not saying that I like, but I certainly credit Apple with understanding that people don't like a lot of choices. They want it to be simple. And I think that this is the conclusion that carriers have come to. When someone walks through the door, they don't want to see 12 different brands of phones. They want, do you like this better or this? Oh, this one, okay. Are you paying with cash or check? Or cash or check? You're paying with cash or credit, right? Very simple. Well, I haven't agreed to buy yet. Doesn't matter. You kind of have. That's how that one works. So this lady said that she decided to take the iPhone 10 and try it out, because I guess she had an iPhone 7 also, and she wanted to use the iPhone 10, go back to the iPhone 7, and see what was so interesting about it. And she talks about how the camera might be able to sway her. Obviously, every generation of phone is going to have a slightly better camera, except for the iPhone 8, because it's basically got the iPhone 7's camera, right? But with the iPhone 10, we have a better camera. We have the Face ID, which she kind of points out as being something she didn't like. And I'm not surprised. I don't use the Touch ID, and I don't mind using a password, but I sure couldn't see having to hold the phone up to my face. If it could sit on the table and you just look at it and it turns on, that would be one thing. But the fact that you have to, be in front of the phone, to me, that doesn't create the hands-free operation I think that they're kind of shooting for, because she talks about, keeping her hands busy and being able to look at her phone and see notifications. I assume that phone has to be on some sort of stand to where you can see it. But okay, fair enough. Beyond the camera, what else do we like? Here's the part I was talking about where she says Face ID shows previews. When unlocked means the notification appears before the preview or without the preview, and then reveals it when you unlock the screen with your face. No hands necessary. But in order to unlock the phone, I think your face needs to be in front of it, right? So it may be no hands necessary, but you're going to have your phone in a position where it can see your face, right? So Okay, fair enough. If you like that, I gotcha. The other thing, it was tapping the screen to turn it on, which we have seen Android and even Windows doing for since when? I don't know, the last century. So the fact that the iPhone actually has that now just blows my mind that that wasn't a thing forever ago. But definitely a positive. I agree. That's something that my iPhone 7 doesn't have, and I always thought that was kind of silly. You know, all the way back to the Galaxy, what was it? Was it the S5? My Windows phone definitely had it, and that was 2012, 2013. So that's a great feature to have. I'm surprised that all iPhones haven't had that forever. Well, I had it for a few days later. I found I was willing to deal with the iPhone 10's utility flaws for the ones that, for the features I could like. For me, those features were the camera, the display, and the fact that you didn't have to hold the phone to use it. And I thought she said what she didn't like on here somewhere. And I think one of it was that the battery life was still not significantly better, which is kind of the thing that every year we hope to see an improvement in, right? Battery life, battery life, battery life. And instead we get 10 other features that some of us will use, but a lot of us won't. I think that's true for all manufacturers. They're trying to throw in all kinds of crazy stuff, and in many cases it's not something that the majority of their customers use. I'm still drinking coffee here. I'm curious, is anyone watching this using an iPhone 10? And if so, do you find anything that is just groundbreaking and so great that you can never see leaving that and going back to another phone? And is there anything about the iPhone 10 that you can't stand? I'm not speaking from my own experience because I've seen the iPhone 10, I've played around with it a little bit, but honestly, I'm pretty simple when it comes to phones. So I wasn't looking for a lot, but I didn't care for the Face ID feature, and I don't want to pay for features that I don't use. And that's kind of another thing I feel about all the stuff that's packed into phones, is that obviously it costs money to assemble that. So when we look at these big price tags, it makes sense if you're using the majority of the features that are built in that justify that price. But if you don't, then you're certainly buying a lot of stuff that you don't need. You know, I don't need a big rig to get the job done if I can fit things in the trunk of my car. So why would I ever pay for the expenses involved in something like that when I can get the job done just fine? That's just my opinion. Let's see. The only phone that make anything remotely different was Alcatel with their Idol 4 that make indistinct grabbing the phone from up to down. What? I don't get that. They make indistinct grabbing the phone from up to down. So what does that mean? Like there's no top and bottom, like either end? Because I like that feature. Sorry, no phone is worth $1,400 Canadian. You and I both, Greg. I am not paying a grand for any. I'm not gonna pay. Wow, it blows my mind. And think about what else do we have that we spend that much money on, you know, almost every year. Like a lot of people upgrade their phones every year, maybe every year and a half, 2 years. $1,000. What else do you buy that costs that kind of money that you have to constantly upgrade? I can't think of too many things. Only thing different from iPhone 10 to their siblings is the OLED display. And I gotta say, you know, Apple has done a great job with LCD technology. For me, it's fine. It may drain the battery a little faster. I think the biggest advantage of OLED is having the truer, deeper blacks and having less battery consumption because we're not lighting up the entire screen when we don't need to. But for the most part, the battery on my 8 Plus is pretty decent, so I'm certainly not complaining there. I don't see anyone saying, yes, I have an iPhone 10, so I'm going to assume that you guys don't, and I don't blame you. I'm curious. I'll probably at some point pick one up and use it for a couple weeks and check it out, but that'll be when they drop the price down around $300 allegedly. Okay, so there are some rumors flying around that this year Apple will make huge prices across the board to all of their handsets. We'll have to wait and see if that happens, but if it does, and it would make a lot of sense to me that they would do that, because when you reach a certain level of penetration in any type of market and you're manufacturing a premium product, whatever that may be, and this you know, you can look at anything. We talk about things like you know, prescription meds or elective surgery, and once, you know, if the procedure's brand new and it's very expensive and only the wealthy can afford it, that's fine until every wealthy person who wants that service or that procedure or that drug or whatever it is already has it. Then you've got to figure out a way to sell to other people. So if you've got $1,000 phone and your goal is to sell more more of that model, and you've already exhausted you've already penetrated the market in the category of people who are willing to spend that much money. If you want to continue to grow, you have to find another way to do it. And to me, dropping the prices on the iPhone 10 and the 10 Plus and whatever else there is would make a lot of sense. Let's see. Let's cover that for a second. Thing is, most people never realize that the total dollar amount of a phone, because it is buried in their monthly charges. And I missed one here. I gotta agree with you. And this is the crazy thing about this whole campaign in marketing that we've had forever in the U.S. in particular. And I can only speak for us here because this is where I live. It's probably like this in many other places in the world. But the whole idea of buy now, pay later, and locking people into installment plans is so ridiculously effective that we have things like Rent-A-Center, I shouldn't say Rent-A-Center, rent-to-own stores. It could be any brand name, obviously, where people will end up buying a big screen TV that should cost $800 and their total payments add up to $2,400 over the long term. Or we have these check cashing places where you cash a $100 check and you're going to end up paying back $250. I mean, that is just insane. And it would be nice to say, well, if that doesn't make sense to you, don't do it. But the marketing is strong. The programming that you need to have this in your life is so powerful that there are a lot of people out there who, choose not to, or maybe can't resist it. And I'm not saying that we need to jump in and, we certainly have enough government involvement in regulating what people can and can't do. But being able to charge that type of interest on anything, it's ridiculous. But it does continue to happen, right? I may switch from iOS to Android, Harvey says. More and more apps don't support older firmware and hardware on the iPad too. I would encourage everyone to try both for sure. I absolutely want to see what I'm missing and make my decisions accordingly. And once you get sucked into an ecosystem, especially Apple's, it is particularly difficult to get away from. But if they're not supporting your old apps, that I think is one of the, it's kind of a double-edged sword because they're trying to push you into new hardware. And if you're at the point where you say, yeah, I don't want new hardware, I'm good here, and they say, well, these apps aren't supported anymore, you've only got one alternative, right? And that is to go somewhere else. And it's frustrating. I hate to see a perfectly good working phone that suddenly doesn't support the apps, or the apps aren't supported for that model just because. Go buy a new one. I have Lance has an iPhone 8 Plus, and I don't think it's that different from the iPhone 10. Okay, good to hear. I haven't used much in the iPhone 10. I have the iPhone 8 Plus, and honestly, I don't think it's all that different from the iPhone 7. It's bigger, and the battery does last longer. The camera's kind of cool for that bokeh effect, because I do some photography stuff for my reviews, but outside of that, I don't generally use that too much, and yeah, it's a solid phone. Certainly not complaining. Certainly not knocking them. A lot of people come in here and think that I'm an Apple hater, and I'm absolutely not. I think that all these companies have many areas where they can improve, and it's our job, really our responsibility, to point out their flaws and say, here's what you should do to be fair to your customers. That's my thinking anyways. Those check cashing places are catering to people with bad credit or no bank account. Exactly the people who cannot afford to pay those types of interest rates, right? It's worse than a loan shark. I mean, come on. It is insanity. Johnny was talking about the I lost the Alcatel here for the Idol 4. Says yes, no distinction from up to down because there's a dual speaker. There's dual speaker and the camera was embedded inside of the speaker grill. The camera was embedded inside of the speaker grill. What? The screen view auto adjusted to the position of the user. That's cool. I remember for the longest time one of the most frustrating things to me was not being able to turn an iPhone into landscape mode for everything, like even the home screen. And they finally made some changes to that, because when I used to try to text, if you can imagine, on an iPhone 4, trying to text vertically, not happening. Like the keys were just too small. Why don't you just turn it sideways? Oh, you couldn't do that for the longest time. And that made me insane. And I don't have particularly huge hands. I mean, I don't have Donald Trump hands, but I have average size hands. And trying to tap those little things, the autocorrect was out of hand. So I'm glad they fixed that. All right, so this is a reflection of what is going on today in the here and now. There's a Chinese city, allegedly. This is BBC. There's a Chinese city that gets a smartphone zombie walkway, which I think is a great idea. How often are you walking behind, near, or crossing paths with someone who can't take their eyes off of the phone, and suddenly you have to do all the maneuvering, and you almost, I wouldn't say you should bump into them, but you almost want to bring to their attention that, hey, it's also your job to look out for other people while you're walking. Don't fall into a manhole or do something crazy. Well, a northern city in China has introduced a special pedestrian lane on one of its roads exclusively for slow walking smartphone users. It is reported. I am probably not going to be able to pronounce this either. Shanxi Online News says a payment along Yanta Road in Xi'an. I wish they would spell this stuff out like phonetically so you could kind of see what it really means. They have a special lane now for fubbers, people who stare at their phones and ignore everything else around them. I feel like that is already happening everywhere. It's just not designated yet, and we need to be able to tell people to get to that part. Everybody walking along here thinks it's very safe. At the side of the road there are cars, and the vehicles also come onto here, and sometimes only to avoid you. Young people's lives nowadays are fast, and they're always looking at their phones, and I would argue it's not just young people in many cases. This puts our minds at rest. Those of us who are often looking at our phones, it is a form of protection. So we've reached the point where we need special designated areas to walk because we can't pay attention to our surroundings and make sure we don't get run over by a car. So if you want to browse the web or check your Facebook or whatever it is that you're doing, jump into this special designated iZombie lane, and you can just kind of, bumble around. I want to say stumble down the road, as people often do. And I don't know about you guys, but for some reason, almost every time I go somewhere with a large number of people, I will inevitably end up in an area that only has 4-6 feet either way, and I'll be behind someone who is meandering. Yes, that is the term. Like literally going left and then cutting right and just going back and forth. And it's even worse when you have 2 or 3 people in a row doing the same thing. Like they don't understand how the sidewalk works. It's like if you're going this direction, I'm going that direction. We each get to a side. If you're going to get slow, move out of the way. Don't spread out and take up as much room as you can. Some of us have to get somewhere. It's the equivalent of the guy in the fast lane going 35 miles an hour on the freeway. I just never got that. And now that problem is going to be even worse, obviously, because people are staring at their phones while they're trying to walk. So great idea, I think. But, now we're going to have a bike lane, what do they call this again? A fubber thing or something? Oh, a smartphone zombie lane, a bike lane. There'll probably be something else eventually at some point in time for people with, some other challenge when it comes to getting themselves down the road. So, wow, it's ridiculous. And at the same time, it makes sense because we see this so often. It just drives you nuts. Highly distracted people lane, HD people. I see hordes of cell phone zombies every day in LA. I have to rev my engine and honk to get their attention. This is what blows my mind. There's 2 things that just, I can't imagine the thought process when someone does this. Another one, and I'm not here to complain, but just this reminds me of so many things that are happening even before smartphones became a deal. How often do you come up to a crosswalk and there's a pedestrian, and some of the people who are crossing the road seriously seem like they will purposely take their time and casually stroll in front, walk across. When I'm crossing a lane or I'm in a parking lot or there's moving vehicles, my mission is to get out of the area that they use as soon as possible. That includes a crosswalk. I'm not going to take my time coming through a crosswalk. It's bad enough people can't walk. We certainly have people on the road that can't drive properly. But when someone walks in front of your car and makes eye contact with you and purposely just strolls as slowly as they can, I hope that they never come across someone who's already road raged out and just says, you know what, I have insurance for a reason. And, things could definitely go bad. But the other one, like you said, is people just not being aware, like having no idea what's going on in their environment while they're walking. And there are vehicles, if you collide with a person, it's going to be one thing. But if you collide with a telephone pole or a car or something that's moving comes into contact with you, it could get bad. I just don't get it. They have to design an app to alert people about their surroundings while text walking. You know, I don't know. My nephew actually had this really cool app on his phone, which I thought was funny at the time, but it made a lot of sense. It would make the phone, excuse me, I'm still getting over this cold. It's almost gone. This app that he had would make the phone utilize the camera so that as you were reading your text messages or surfing or whatever it was, that was transparent outside of the text, and then behind it you could actually see the sidewalk in front of you. I don't know what the app was called, but it was, again, I was like, really? We really need this? And now I'm thinking, yeah, there are a lot of people who probably need that just to be able, but I mean, there's other things going on in the environment, right? There are a lot of people falling inside potholes or open manholes just due to distraction, and that is so sad. I saw a video or a GIF image recently where a guy avoided tripping on a hose, and I think it was like a sewer pump hose or something like that, and he almost falls down, and he recovers just in time to step up over it and end up going into a manhole, which I can only imagine. It could not end well. I usually binge my attention to the cell phone only while I'm sitting and during my idle time. I have a question. When you're at a stoplight, because we talked about this law in Canada where you can be fined for using your watch. If you double tap your watch or tap your watch to turn it on, your smartwatch, inside the car, they're saying that that is a distracted driving offense. And then the argument was that if it's mounted permanently, which I guess on your wrist it kind of is, that should be an exception to the rule, especially if you're just tapping it. You know, I can see if you're texting or something, but do you guys text while you're at a stop sign or read your notifications while you're at a stoplight? I'm curious about that because I don't know specifically how the law applies to that. I would think if the vehicle's not moving, if you're at a complete standstill, it doesn't seem like that. It should be against the law, but at the same time, there are still other moving vehicles on the road that you should be aware of. So I don't know how that works. Start a militia and take over the government. What? What? Why? In regards to what? And number two, secondly, good luck, because the military's got a pretty good, I mean, the government has a pretty good sized militia of their own called the military. And I think at this point in time, even if if you're pro-gun or anti-gun, the original, one of the statements behind that was a well-regulated militia to, somewhat prevent government tyranny and to prevent the government from getting out of control or too powerful or anything like that. And that time is come and gone. The government certainly has more firepower than the country combined, everyone here. So, yeah, I wish, I'm not even going to say that. I'll say this. I wish something could be done about this unfortunate ruling that the FCC made back in December. And we should be able to have them overturn that in some form. Since you are not paying attention to the traffic light at the intersection, think rule is if the car is in running and in gear, you should have control of it. Okay, fair. And I don't know specifically how the law is here. I'll need to do some research on that, but I'm curious because when my phone goes off, I never text, even at the stoplight, but if it's a notification, I will take my eyes off the road if the car's not moving to look down and see what the notification says. And I don't know if that's a crime. I hope it's not. I'll be in trouble if it is. No person. All right, so let's move on here. We have 15 minutes. I'm going to try to get through these. Does wireless charging degrade your battery faster? We asked an expert. We didn't. Somebody did. And here's, I think we need to do an entire stream or at least a video about nothing but wireless charging because there's so much misinformation out there. To this day, I have customers who try to treat their lithium-ion polymer batteries as if they are NiCads. And if you're not familiar with nickel-cadmium batteries, they were very sensitive to being discharged. You had to discharge them, quite a ways before you recharge them. Otherwise, they developed this thing called the memory effect. And for a while, it was possible to overcharge them. So if you just left them plugged in indefinitely, at a certain point, there wasn't any technology built in to prevent them from getting too much charge, and the batteries would have problems. And there was all these crazy things you had to do. When you bought your phone, you had to fully charge it overnight and then discharge it completely the first time to kind of break it in and exercise the chemicals inside the battery, yada. It goes on, right? Well, a lot of it has changed but we have people that try to treat lithium-ion batteries the same way that they do nickel-cadmium. And the problem, of course, is that they're designed differently, and they do develop problems if you don't maintain them properly. And one of the worst things that you can do is to charge your battery while you have a lot of processes going on in the phone. So if you're doing something that's intensive to the display and the processor, which is a lot of the stuff that we do, including, you know, playing a video on your phone, it is not a good idea to be charging your phone at that time, because the higher the temperature is on the battery, which it will be under heavy use, the more prone it is to being physically damaged during the charging process. So that's like number one. You know, secondly, they're stating on here, because they contacted someone, I want to say who, let's find out who it was before I say anything. Who was the guy here? How does it work? So we talked to Dr. Daniel Abraham, a senior scientist at the Argonne Laboratory, and he said electrical energy is changed into chemical energy. We know that. The battery, okay, this is all just stuff about the specs, but the main thing here that I took away from this, that I think most people don't really realize, you know, they've never been told this, is that lithium-ion batteries, and we have known this for a while, lithium-ion batteries are not designed to be discharged completely. In fact, if you let your phone drain below 10%, you can diminish the lifespan of that battery. Also, they are not designed to be charged up to 100%. And when you start getting to the upper, you know, kind of to the top 95, 96%, they even say at 90, you know, I think either this article or another one, 90% is probably about as high as you need to go. That is the rapid charge cutoff. Once your battery reaches like 90, 95%, it is going to take a very long time to get the rest of the way up to 100, and it's not going to help you out that much, because that few percentage points that you gain really aren't justified, number one. Secondly, your phone, I want to say that they were suggesting that anytime after 50%, okay, if your battery dips down to 50%, that's a great time to throw it on the charger. And when you reach 80%, let's see, I want to say they said when you reach 80%, that's plenty. Like, you don't need to go beyond that. So keeping your lithium-ion battery between 50 and 80% is fine. It's not going to damage it. It's actually healthy to do that. And it goes right along. Oh, yeah, here we go. So he says the advice that your battery will last longer if it stays between 50 and 80%. So no need to go all the way up to 100. Definitely don't need to discharge it down to 0. But, you know, if you get below 50% and you're near a charger, there's no reason not to throw your phone on it at that point. And this is kind of one of the supporting arguments that I have for wireless charging, is that as I sit here talking to you, my phone's on the charger. I set it down, I pick it up in the middle of the night. I'm not looking for a cord here or anything. Of course, you don't really want to charge it overnight, right? If we're trying not to go above the 100% mark. But anytime my phone's not in use, I just set it down on a surface and it's charging, and I don't plug it in. And my charge port should never wear out. I should be able to use that for transferring data if I want to my laptop. I should be able to use it for a video adapter, so I can use it as a camera. Let's see if I can show you this. This is a pretty cool little device here. Plugs into your lightning port, HDMI on the other side, charger right over here. So you can charge the phone and have your HDMI output going onto whatever screen you want to put it on. I'm a big fan of that adapter. It works for a lot of things that I use it for, that I need it for. But I don't have to charge my phone by plugging it in, and for that reason, I'm never going to have a TriStar issue. And this is OEM, so it can't be. It's unauthorized by Apple. This is made by Apple. I should never run into a TriStar issue on this iPhone 8 as long as I stick to wireless charging. And personally, that works for me. Now, the argument that I got when I made this statement, because I tweeted this, I said, hey, wireless charging, we should have wireless charging by now, okay? And this is exactly what I said. It's funny that the feature this article stated is we can certainly do without wireless charging, is a deal breaker for most of us. My money is on no. See, this is what I was stating. I was quoting this article because they said, you know what? Nobody cares about wireless charging. I said, okay, fair. Maybe I'm clearly in the majority, but I care about it. And this is what I said. HTC has other problems. I think they messed up a long time ago. I'm sad to see that. I want to see other companies produce products that people like so that we have more choices and more competition in the marketplace. But the response I got, at least one response I got here, Is wireless charging. Wireless charging should be like you connect your device, sit somewhere on your couch with no cables, and your device charges wirelessly as you use it. And I agree. Heck, wireless charging should be a big tower in the middle of town, and no matter where you are, your phone is always charging. You should never have to worry about where it's located, right? Maybe it's just a transmitter in your house or at the end of the block or whatever. But fact of the matter is, we're not there yet. We don't have that. But what we do have is wireless charging mats that you can set your phone on. And for me, that works. That's my preference. So I totally understand the point that's being made here. Wireless charging should be better than it is, but I still think that what we're working with now is better than having to charge your phone in, carry around cords, risk dropping it off a table while the charger's plugged into it, trying to fumble with that thing while you're driving. I could go on. Like, for me, it works well. I think it's an underrated feature. He also said there's no difference between connecting a cable and laying your device down and laying your device on a charging port. Okay, fair enough. I'm not going to argue that, but for me, it is certainly easier to set it down on a surface than to plug it in, or to look for a wire, or have somehow my charging blocks always disappear. I don't know how that happens, or my lightning cables. I don't know where they go, but they disappear quite often. For me, it works. That's all I'm saying, folks. That's all I'm saying. Okay, so where do we go here? You would be surprised how many military would turn on a government, I suspect, on a government that turned on its people. They take their oaths more seriously than politicians. And I agree completely. People, the vast majority of people who are in the military, you talk to them and they are pro-America. They're not necessarily pro-American government. I couldn't agree more. I know a lot of people who are in the military, and they're much more rationally minded than probably any politician, the majority of politicians that I've heard from. And in fact, these soldiers are, and this is something I meant to mention, because obviously we had Memorial Day recently, and it's sad that we have to worry about something like the loss of net neutrality when we have so many people who are willing to fight and to risk or give their lives for us to continue to be free in this country. And yet, the real problems I think that we're seeing are coming from the inside. The rights that we have, that we're so proud of and that people talk about in this country, they're not being threatened by someone overseas. They're not being threatened by some boogeyman that, we're worried about sneaking into the country. They're being threatened by the very people who are controlling those who govern our nation. That's the sad part. You send people off to fight, and they're proud to do so to maintain freedom, and yet the real threat doesn't seem to be coming from the people that they're fighting against, and that's really sad. But let's not get too political here, Mike. They have to design. Let me make sure I didn't miss any comments here. Unless the battery has a high content of water that make it susceptible to microwave chemical degradation, I doubt it. Look at what happened to Egypt. They have to design mobile batteries like the space shuttle, able to reach beyond 100% performance. That would be cool. I wish there was a wireless charger that has a fan to keep the phone cool while being charged. You may be onto something, Harvey. If you haven't already patented that and no one else has, if there was a wireless charging mat with a built-in fan, kind of like those laptop chargers, people in warm environments certainly see the effects of how weather, how do I want to put this? So I lived in Las Vegas for about 10 years, and moving there, you see such a difference in tires, the paint on your car. I am sure if you spend a lot of time outside during the summer, what that's going to do to any lithium battery, any type of battery that you're using. So you might have a good idea there, Harvey. Just saying. Nikola Tesla tried the wireless power transmission thing, and it was a downfall of his reputation because it wasn't gonna make a lot of money for big corporations. He wanted to give people things and not capitalize on it, not just profit from it. He wanted people to have things. A little like Bernie Sanders, let's give people education. Oh, no, that's a terrible idea. Why would we want everyone to have an education? I don't get it. It baffles me. On the serious side, have anyone looked into the infrared beam wireless charging prototype? What? No, I haven't, but I'd like to see it. Citizen confidence in their governments is what should upload a solid democracy. Yeah, I'm gonna get way sidetracked if I continue on that thread, so I will stop for now and try not to do that. So Apple, let's try to get through this. Wow, time just flies here. Apple or iPhone exclusive Apple radical design confirmed. I do drink too much coffee. So according to this article, which again we've already had people come back and say, yeah, that's what this article said, but I'm skeptical. And a lot of times what will happen is some manufacturer will leak the design for a case for a specific product. And the thing about this is the manufacturers want accessories to be available to the public when their product goes for sale. So these accessory companies, it seems, have kind of an early look at the design, or at least the form factor for the phones. And they're saying that Ghost Tech, a partnership which previously saw Samsung's Galaxy S9 leak in December, has allowed this guy, Gordon Kelly from Forbes, to obtain the schematics for the so-called budget iPhone 10 and the supersized iPhone 10 Plus. And while he expects the former to be the bestseller, is the latter that'll shake up the smartphone world. And long story short, here's what they're talking about: a triple camera on the back of the iPhone 10 Plus. We shall see. Obviously, they've already been beaten to the punch by Huawei, and as they have been on many things. But if Apple does it, of course, then what next? Everyone else is going to have 3 cameras, I would assume. So the question here really is that, are there going to be 3 cameras on the back? They're talking about a monochrome, a zoom, and a regular camera, so that you can get all these different effects from it. But it's possible that the cutout that would accommodate this triple camera setup might actually be 2 cameras and a flash instead. And only Apple knows that right now. So I always take these with a bit of skepticism, these leaks. I know that to a certain extent some of them are intentional, and at the same time there's so much sales hype going here, encouraging people to kind of guess. And I'm not even showing you guys the browser here. Let's get back to this. So this is the schematic. You can check this out again. These links are down in the video description over here. If you want to see the articles in this picture close up, this is what they're talking about as far as the design for the iPhone 10 series, the iPhone 10, iPhone 10 budget, or iPhone 10 mini and the Plus, whatever they're going to have here. And talking about, we had some specs here just a second ago. Where'd we go? So in addition to this, the schematic show Apple has managed to cram a massive 6.5-inch display into the iPhone 10 Plus, yet kept its smaller footprint smaller than the 5.5-inch iPhone 8 Plus, compared to 6.24 by 3 inches. That said, a steel chassis means it should weigh more than the 202-gram aluminum iPhone 8 Plus. I got to tell you, one thing about this 8 Plus, it weighs enough. Like, I couldn't see getting a heavier phone. It doesn't seem like a lot, but when you're holding that thing up in front of your face for a while, especially if you have to hold it up to unlock it every time. Budget iPhone 10, goodbye mini iPhone 10. And again, this is all just rumors at this point, that there will be a 6.1-inch phone. Its budget roots can be seen in a single rear camera. I'm not going to read the whole article here, but here's the main thing. The appeal of the budget iPhone 10 will be the cost with Apple expected to slash prices across the board, across the entire iPhone 10 range, by as much as $300 compared to last year. Is that going to really happen? We don't know, but it would make a whole lot of sense. I would think 100 would be the minimum price cut that we should expect, and something along the lines of $300 would be a huge thing for Apple to reach, a lot of the people who are still holding out and just saying, you know what, these iPhones are great, but they just cost too much. They're not worth it. I could see a large number of people going, okay, now's the time to go ahead and get an iPhone. Everyone else is doing it. And, again, this is kind of sad because we don't want to have one manufacturer monopolizing an entire market, but we're not seeing the type of growth with Samsung that we would probably expect to at this point in time. So I don't know. I'm concerned for that company. I'm concerned for Android in general. I know that will always be a lot of us who say, hey, I want to see both sides, or I want to have an Android no matter what. But that number seems to be getting smaller. So with the trade issues that we're having, and with the government, with the U.S. government advising people against using a lot of Chinese-made phones, man, it's crazy. It really seems like Apple is taking everything over, for better or for worse. that could happen. You know, one thing that you can't really argue is that anyone who at some point in time thought that they were in an exclusive club by owning an Apple product, well, not so much anymore. I mean, that day's kind of gone. Now Apple is kind of like the phone of the people. Oh, you got an iPhone? Everybody's got an iPhone. So there's certainly nothing exclusive about that anymore. I'm not sure what that means, you know, to a small group of people who kind of had that I'm cooler than you attitude because I have an iPhone. Because you know what? Now you're like everybody else for the most part. So not that that'll be a factor, I suppose. Why don't they design displays with rugged corners if they have gone the way of the notches? I gotta say, one thing that I'm confident about, that is none of the manufacturers out there are going to make anything that's too durable. It wouldn't make sense. And it's sad, but it's unfortunate, but this is how business works. If you manufacture a product, you really don't want it to be bulletproof unless you're making a whole lot of money on that initial sale, especially with Apple getting into the repair market, you know, trying to take that over, and considering that independent phone repair is a multi-billion-dollar business. Obviously, the point in time has come where they said, hey, we want to get all of the money that people spend on their iPhones, including when they break it. And I think they have a ways to go on that, and I hope it never comes true. But there's not an Apple store down the street for everyone. So, you know, in some areas, I think we're safe. I don't think it's 100% yet, but it's interesting to see that. You know, I believe that Apple is, well, we know that Apple is making a lot more through applications and other services now. The crazy thing being that you still only get 5 gigabytes of iCloud storage, which those of you who know me know that I'm not a cloud person, but a lot of people are. And if the default is 5 gigabytes, and I think you can increase that quite a bit by like 99 cents a month. I think you get some ridiculous amount of storage. So Apple trying to get like an extra dollar out of each customer just kind of strikes me as funny. Apple is as American as the soy sauce made in China with American soybeans. Okay. There was one last thing on here I wanted to get to, folks, before I take off, I think, and that was this. I thought this was kind of interesting. Essential. I love the title on this article. This is CNET. Essential heard you liked headphone jacks. So here's a ridiculous module, and to this day I don't know how this thing connects, but Essential making a module that you can attach to your phone so that you can still use your 3.5 millimeter headset jack. And as our Mike pointed out or tweeted to me, how would this make sense if this thing connects through Bluetooth? I mean, it would just basically be like a dongle that you physically attach to your phone. So I don't know that this is going to do a lot for Essential, but I think it's interesting that they came up with this. It's magnetic, so it sticks on there, which means it's got to connect through Bluetooth, right? Unless there's we don't really see, and apparently Essential is being quiet about exactly how this works and what the details are, so we don't know 100%. But a magnetic attachment you put on the back of your phone, and now you have a 3.5 millimeter headset jack, because I guess they couldn't just put it in the phone because it takes up so much room. Interesting. I guess we'll find out this summer exactly how this thing works. I would not count on this to be the thing that will popularize Essential, but at least you could still use your old headset jacks. And the argument stands that you never get quite the same audio quality with a wireless connection. That's the bottom line. And I'm a huge fan of Bluetooth, but no Bluetooth is going to sound as good as a good pair of headphones plugged in directly with a physical connection. So until that technology becomes available, it's kind of nice to hold on to them and have that option. Although someone was telling me recently how great the latest version of Bluetooth is, where you can connect to like 4 or 5 devices at one time, which I think is awesome because I have a list of Bluetooth devices in my phone. What do we get? Let me open this up, Johnny. What do we say? Google gives you 256 by default on Gmail and for free. And what it makes me laugh kind of about the 5 gigabyte limit on the iCloud is this: Apple is smart, and all these companies are very smart. But take for example a Prime membership on Amazon with unlimited cloud storage, right? Or whatever that. There's some option. There's some feature I have on Amazon where it's unlimited cloud storage, which I don't even use. But there's no way you can just hook your iPhone up to that and have everything automatically synchronized, right? You have 256 gigabytes. I'm sorry, 25. I said 256. 25 gigabytes of storage on Gmail or Google Drive for free. And if your iPhone worked with that, you could utilize that, take advantage of it, and not have to pay an extra any amount of money. You know, having those little extra charges recurring, even if it's 99 cents a month, it's just like, come on, guys. You sold a $1,000 phone, and now you're going to try to shake down your customer for another 99 cents a month. It seems like a bit much, doesn't it? What happens if I need to film a video with the camera accessory while using corded headphones? Man, I don't have an answer for you there. Maybe there is a splitter attachment that you can plug in that has two bigger attachments and you can plug. Man, I don't know. I don't know how that works, but I guess we'll find out the details later on. That is pretty much it. Only went 5 minutes over today. Thank you all for joining me for the afternoon live stream. I am up in the air about Thursday, so I don't want to ask you to show up and see this Thursday because I may not be available. If I am, by all means, I'll do a live stream, but if I don't, you'll know why. You're the first to know anyways. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do this Thursday. If not, I'll be back Monday at 2 p.m. and back as usual next Thursday at 6 p.m. And who knows, I might be able to pop on here and stream regardless. I just don't want to make that commitment and have people say, hey, you said you're going to live stream. And then certainly YouTube would not like that. So that's it for me for this afternoon. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll be in the chat for a few minutes. And after that, I'm going to get back to work, and I'll talk to you later.